So another year filled with a boatload of games has come into the docks and then gone with the wind. 2016 wasn't actually a bad year for gaming, but there's certainly been a lot better years. The AAA side of things hasn't gone down as well as we'd like it to this generation. Personally, I've become more invested in the indie side of things these past 2 or 3 years, although that area as well is not free of disappointment and questionable actions. Hello everyone, I'm RedBeakRaven and welcome to 2017. That may sound like I was here before you, so spoiler alert, I'm a time traveller. I'm also nuts. So in this video I'm going to be highlighting some of the games I'm looking forward to this year and mention some games that I think are worth keeping an eye on. As I said, last year wasn't too bad a year for gaming, but looking at the list for this year's titles, oh, am I looking forward to the Steam sales. What? I buy games at full price, sometimes. Alright, I'm more weary now, okay? This generation's been a bit of a poor one in the technical department. You know, that's not helping. Let's just get on with the list, shall we? So in no particular order, let's start with Yourkelele. So this Banjo-Kazooie-like duo has me very excited for not just this game, but the future of platformers. Specifically those from Playtonic Games, as I think we can all agree this game is going to sell well and with good reason. It looks brilliant, and there haven't been a great deal of 3D platformers in recent years, or at least nothing compared to the amount of 3D platformers that were released in the late 90s and early 2000s. I imagine there'll be a fair few N64 gamers out there like myself who are eagerly awaiting this title. From everything we've seen so far, it looks like a smidge of the golden era of 90s platformers is coming back in style and with a new coat of paint. Yourkelele definitely looks like a game that is chock full of nostalgia, old Rareware techniques and many N64 platformer influences. A prime example of that is the minecart sequence that looks incredibly similar to that from Donkey Kong Country. I cannot tell you how lit up my face was when I found out about this game, and that it wasn't just any old developer making it, but some of the former key members from Rareware itself. Hopefully this will stick Playtonic Games on the map and cement a place in the industry for them. Next up is Prey. Yes, this reimagining of the original concept definitely deserves some attention. Despite this not being the game so many of us were looking forward to back in 2011, possibly 12, I can't actually remember, but never mind, this does look like it has a lot of potential to be satisfying enough. We've yet to see clearly how much this game takes from its predecessors. I myself have only played a small fraction of the first Prey, but if I remember right, there was a supernatural element tied to it. This one looks to be more scientific as we gain powers from the alien force known as the Typhon by means of needles in the eye and yeah, that. The ability that stands out the most being the Mimic ability, which will allow us to play Gmod prop hunt in space and get to hard to reach areas at the same time. I suppose now we'll be able to finally say that we spent hours playing Coffee Mug Simulator in space. Alright, maybe you won't spend hours mimicking stuff, but, well, I will. Oh, come on, that's the only reason we'll be buying the bloody thing. That and because Chris Avallone is one of the writers, so expect a strong narrative on top of potentially interesting gameplay. What makes this game even more interesting to me is the likeness it has to System Shock and a few other games influenced by that series alone, and it just looks like the game could overall provide a familiar but unique experience. Now let's move on to something that is out very soon, and a game that I'm sure made the majority of us tilt our heads in confusion and then recoil in surprise. No, it's not the reveal that Death Stranding is actually Half-Life 3, it is Resident Evil 7, or Biohazard 7 for the fan folks in Japan. For many years, the Resident Evil series has had its fair share of ups and downs, which you could say is to be expected for a series that's been around for over 20 years, especially for a series that's been milked more times than a dairy cow is in a month. Slight exaggeration, but still, when you look at the timeline, there are only 4 years between 1996 and 2016 where we didn't see a Resident Evil game get released. Not that I'm saying they need to take a break or simply stop, well, at least not now with this new one coming out, but it wouldn't be a bad idea. Nevertheless, I am quite pleased with the direction they are taking the series in number 7. I'm a huge fan of horror games like Outlast, Penumbra, Soma, so naturally this instantly took my interest. I love how they presented the game with a very PTS demo, and I'm glad that it isn't following the run and hide trend a lot of survival horror games nowadays seem to follow. I'm really interested in seeing how the family, the antagonists, actually work out, and seeing this in all its potential first-person glory. I hope that this revives the series in some way, because let's be honest, this is a series that became crap beyond the year 2000, with some exceptions of course. I personally haven't been a fan of the series since the days of Nemesis and Zero. Tell you now, those games were nerve-wracking. In a nutshell, I hope Resident Evil 7 is the start of something new for the series, and of course a return to its original roots somewhat. This is a series that has to a degree seen some drastic changes, from being adapted into products available on every platform to a tactical shooter that stands out about as well as the other 4,000 odd games released on Steam last year. Regardless, it's clear this this series is not done yet, and I hope that it's for the better. Resident Evil 7 is definitely on my wishlist and is one title worth watching. And while speaking of horror games, let's go next with Outlast 2. Now I am extremely excited for this game and all the shits that will follow upon playing it. The first Outlast took the horror community by storm and quickly became the go-to title for scares and running away from ass-revealing doctors and delusional grooms to be. While Outlast certainly isn't, in my opinion, the best horror game out there, it definitely deserves the attention and praise it's received. I think one of the things that really made Outlast was that it was later made available on consoles. This particular style of survival horror, you know, the run and hide situation, was only really seen often on the PC market, with great games such as Penumbra, Slender and Amnesia. While I do criticise Outlast heavily for its large amount of jump scares that don't really capture what horror is about, I do consider the game to be one of my favourites in its genre, primarily because I found the story and world compelling, and from what we've seen so far with Outlast 2, that looks to be even more intriguing. It looks as if the game is going to play with our minds rather than just hinder our every move towards an escape. I'm fascinated by the Jonestown Massacre inspiration for this game and how religion will play a huge part in it. I'm also hoping, but yet not holding my breath, for some references to the first game and possibly its characters. Outlast 2 so far shows a lot of promise, and I'm glad to see that horror games continue to thrive nowadays, even if it is mostly in the indie scene. Right, let's move on to something very different. Kingdom Come Deliverance. This is a game that I've been keeping my eye on ever since I heard about it back in 2015. Launched as a Kickstarter project in January 2014, Kingdom Come Deliverance has obtained quite the following since the day it was successfully funded. Over the past couple of years, this game has been getting more and more attention, and with good reason. It's a fairly unique take on medieval open world role-playing. The game doesn't follow the traditional medieval RPG route with fictional creatures, magic and high fantasy worlds, but with the actual bog standard medieval backdrop. The world is essentially like our world, or at least like it was 600 years ago. The game looks to be all about realism, all the way from its combat to the world and the people in it. The game is based on a true story and takes place in the Kingdom of Bohemia, which was actually an imperial state of the Holy Roman Empire. It's situated in a place that we now know as modern-day Czech Republic, which is where the developers themselves are based. I am, however, wary about this game, as we should be with all games to be honest, but as much as I like the concept and how they are trying to make a realistic combat system, I do wonder if it will actually turn out well. Part of me thinks that this game will be more of an acquired taste, but I have hopes that it appeals to gamers who are looking for something different in the RPG market. One thing that does make me confident in this game is that it is being directed by Daniel Vavra, the very man who was a writer and designer for Mafia 1 and 2. I am rooting for this game, but for now it's just on my watch list. Oh, and this game has proper forests. No, seriously, just take a moment to look at them, they are ridiculous. You don't see that in The Witcher or The Elder Scrolls. Oh great, I've dug a hole now, haven't I? Anyways, let's move on. Next on the list is another title that is to be released soon, For Honor. So this is a game that apparently took over a decade to make, at least in terms of that's when the idea was first pitched. The game looks visually fantastic. It's dirty, it's brutal, not as gory as some would like, but you can see how well it tries to replicate what a duel between these characters would have been like. The concept of rearranging these factions from our history to fit together in this game world is one that I find very intriguing. The story itself also has me interested, and I really do find this game's combat system somewhat impressive. While the combat appears similar to that from Kingdom Come Deliverance or even Mount & Blade, it is still a fairly unique system, as the devs have managed to successfully create a more complex combat experience for those using a controller. I personally feel like it gives you more control over how you fight. This is one of the reasons I like the multiplayer so much. Its multiplayer is actually one of the most entertaining online experiences I've ever had, and that says a lot from someone who isn't a huge fan of competitive multiplayer. Although the game is still in early days, so that could change. I don't think it will, but that could change. The duels can get tense. The game requires you to learn and practice with its combat in order for you to actually get anywhere and have fun. That is something I find very appealing, but also something that I think might put a lot of people off. So far, I am looking forward to playing this for the single player, but I'm not overly excited for it. I think this would, as well as a lot of other games to be honest, greatly benefit from a 30-minute to an hour-long demo, so that plenty of people have the chance to get a feel for the game before investing in it. And following that, we have Red Dead Redemption 2. Not a whole lot we can really say about this, seeing as though Rockstar showed us what was probably one of the least informative trailers I've ever seen, but that was to be expected. It was only a teaser after all. You know, it was only after watching that I realised how much I hated teasers. Anyways, so after years of wishing and waiting for Red Dead 3 to be announced, Red Dead Redemption 2, we finally have our next-gen Wild West open world game, and what a beautiful looking game it is. I can already imagine some of the things that we may be able to do in this wild world. I'm excited for this by the description on the website alone. alone, it sounds as if we'll see a strong narrative along with some great character development, as the common theory out there is that we'll be a part of a gang. Whether it's John Marston's old gang or a completely new gang of characters is anyone's guess, but I'm looking forward to seeing more revealed about this. Oh, by the way, PC players are over here, Rockstar. If you could just chuck a copy our way, that would be fantastic. We'd be very grateful. We'd make you a lot of money as well. Okay, moving on. Next we have Tom Clancy's Wildlands. Now, even though I haven't got a clue which Tom Clancy game is which, nor have I ever been a fan of the Ghost Recon series, I am intrigued by this. I'm a sucker for open world games in general, but I know enough to be wary of them, especially those that come from Ubisoft. I'm not hating on the company, it's just, you know, they tend to overwhelm us with situations that require us to climb bloody rooftops and collect God knows how many collectibles. So Wildlands, I believe, is the first in the Ghost Recon series to include an open world environment, and while I praise it for that, I'm not necessarily a fan of Ubisoft trying to make almost everything they do open world. That's what it looks like anyways. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, only time will tell. But Wildlands is something I'm keeping my eye on. A large open world to explore is appealing enough, but if there's nothing in it, then what's the point? To be really honest, I have very low expectations for this game, and I can only hope that it proves to be quite the surprise. Following that, we have Vampire. Don't Nod Entertainment's latest project. You might remember them as the developers of Life is Strange. Yeah, quite a different game altogether, isn't it? Vampire is a game that I heard about as soon as its existence was made public, and if you're someone like me who has played and enjoyed games such as Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlands, then you can see why I was actually quite excited for this. The vampires in video games don't really have the greatest reputation, partially due to them not being present very often. I mean, sure, we see them in RPGs like The Elder Scrolls and action games like Castlevania, but they never really capture the true essence of a vampire. Bloodlands is the only game I can think of that manages to show vampires as the powerful and manipulative beings that they are. While Vampire doesn't appear to be the answer to my prayers for a Bloodlands sequel, it definitely has the potential to satisfy my craving for a very good vampire game. I like the way Don't Nod is thinking with this title, how they've created this system where we have the ability to choose whether or not to feed on people surrounding us, thus making our decisions have an impact on the overall story. I'm very intrigued by the setting for the game, seeing 1918 London during the Spanish flu pandemic. It's interesting that our character Jonathan Reed is a doctor whose job is to help people, but yet Reed now suffers from a constant hunger for blood. Obviously we can't say much on this as we've only seen what I'm assuming is a fraction of it, so I'm hopeful that once it's in my hands it's actually an enjoyable experience. Right, one more title to point out and then we'll move on to the honourable mentions, I suppose. This next game is something I've been waiting a long time for. Not as long as Half-Life 3, mind you, but still a long time. So I'm a big Lovecraft fan, and the last time I enjoyed seeing his world come to life in a video game was a game called Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth. This year, however, hopefully, Cthulhu's name will once again be chanted in a video game. Yes, this next game on the list is the Call of Cthulhu game from Cyanide Studio and Focus Home Interactive. I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to seeing more of this. We don't have that much information about the game at the minute, but so far I like what I see. Call of Cthulhu is to be a horror RPG investigation game set on Darkwater Island. I presume what was an investigation into the mysterious death of a woman and her family turns into an intense investigation into Cthulhu and the madness that awaits. It seems that unlike Dark Corners of the Earth, this game is about Cthulhu itself, as its description states that the Great Dreamer prepares its awakening. Apart from the E3 trailer and the fantastic screenshots we have of the game, there's really nothing out there that gives us any more information about this. I do somewhat hope that they'll keep a fairly tight lid on this game, as it would be nice to go into this mostly blind. Obviously I would like to see how the core mechanics for it are and what reviewers say, but anything more than that I don't really want to know. This game is so far next to Yourkelele and Outlast II on my wishlist for this year, and I really, extremely do hope, more so than anything else, that this game is as good as its screenshots make it out to be. There must be a lot, if not some, pressure on the developers to create a game worthy of Lovecraft's work. I think it is to a degree a difficult world to tackle in a video game, because Lovecraft's work is cherished by so many, and Lovecraftian horror itself is fear of the unknown and that which is beyond human comprehension. Sometimes things that can be seen in plain sight but are just wrong and should not exist within our world. I don't think it's impossible to capture this on a visual medium, but it must be difficult and often raises the question, can it really be done outside world words in a book. Nevertheless, I am probably more excited about this game than anything else at the minute, and Cthulhu willing, it isn't a flop. So that's it for the main list. Now we come to some short mentions. We have Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy from Telltale, which will be interesting to see how that pans out. I am a little bit tired of how much Telltale is dishing out. I think they need to slow down a little bit, but I love Guardians of the Galaxy, so I'm on board with this. We then have Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, the prequel to Mount & Blade Warband, which was really just a huge expansion to the original Mount & Blade game. But anyways, I've been a fan of this series since the early days of it, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing an actual sequel, or in this case, prequel, to be released. I honestly did not think this was that popular until I recently had a look at the statistics on Steam. If you're into medieval strategy and want to experience a more complex and controllable melee combat system, then Mount & Blade might just be the game worthy of your attention. We also have Siberia 3, which looks pretty good, the Untitled Destiny sequel, Days Gone, and Detroit Become Human, if any of those do indeed come out this year. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild looks great, and the final thing on my watch list is Agony, the very, very gory, sick, twisted, and beautiful survival horror game that takes place in hell. And my god, does this look like hell. No shit, Sherlock. So that's the end of the list for what games I am watching and waiting for this year. I hope this has given you a solid idea on what the year is going to be like for gaming, and maybe it's even refreshed your memory on some titles that are expected to release this year. From the looks of things, it could very well be an excellent year for gaming. On top of those coming out, we've got the Nintendo Switch, possibly the Scorpio, and who knows what this year's E3 will have in store for us. So there's plenty to see, plenty to play, and of course, plenty to talk about. Now I'd like to hear what you have to say. What are you most looking forward to this year? Is there anything you'd recommend I keep an eye on? Is there anything in this video that took your interest? Let me know if you've got any suggestions that could complete this list. So there you have it, my watch list for gaming in 2017. I hope you all enjoyed the Christmas season, and I wish you good luck in the new year. So hit the like button if you like this video. You can also follow me on Twitter and like me on Facebook. The links to those find you will at the bottom of the description. Anyways, that's all from me. So until next time, I'll see you soon.